Hello everybody. This is Bob Coppage, Crotchety Old Geek, CEO of Simplex-IT, and welcome to BizTech Twist, where we try to take what everybody else would think is a normal business technology topic, but we try to look at it from different perspectives because it's boring otherwise. And today I am joined by, I have to get the pronunciation right.
Dianna Geairn.
Dianna Geairn. I'm sorry.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one, and it's harder to spell, so you're good.
Well, and we talked about this before. This whole it's then do you do it with a Scottish accent? And I'm pretty good at accents, but
which
Scottish
no one should try. Yeah.
Absolutely. In any case, you're with Devtech Group,
Yeah.
and can you introduce yourself better than I did and just talk a little bit about what you do and all that?
Sure, Bob. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really enjoyed our conversation that led to this interview. So hopefully there will be something sort of disruptive and irreverent for people who are listening that'll give them sort of an insight to make their business or technology or their sales better. But I'm Dianna Geairn. I've been in technology sales for quite some time. I've blogged as the Irreverent sales girl for 10 years, disrupting myths about how to sell into enterprise accounts, especially. So my specialty is complex sales, long sales cycles, and really consultative sales. So if you want to talk about transactional sales, I know nothing about that. But that's sort of my specialty. And what I really love to do is talk to people like you who are out to break up some of the common mythology that's out there about how to be successful so that, people can sort of discover for themselves their own, what I like to call natural genius. So that's what I'm all about.
So, and you and I had already talked about kind of where we're going to go with the topic, and we're going to go there, but you just threw something at me that I love, and that's the word irreverent.
Yeah.
Because I remember, because I am old, where irreverent was a negative, where it basically is you're not showing the appropriate level of respect. You are not, you're not going along with the status quo. You're not doing that. But now it's a badge of honor, isn't it?
Well, I find that people really gravitate to that title. The sort of tagline was bringing a dash of dignity to the art of selling. So I would say that I'm very reverent towards salespeople, and I'm very irreverent towards the sales methodologies that really don't work. So that's what I mean by irreverent.
But you could almost say that, especially when you are living in times of change, which I don't know. I've read some things that things have been changing over the last 5-10 years.
Weird.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's one where you could almost make the case of, if you're working in supply chain, if you're working in education, if you're working in healthcare, that there is a certain value that's placed on an irreverent approach. And you nailed it. We still want to be reverent. We still want to be respectful to the players, because the players in some cases don't know how to deal with this change.
Yeah.
But we have to be irreverent to this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't work now.
Yeah. For sure. And I think, one of the things that was most compelling to me about our conversation was there are so many experts out there, and, the experts are the ones who typically aren't doing that trade anymore, right? So there's some great sales experts out there, but a lot of the people that are out there talking about sales have never really done it themselves, or they're not doing it today, right? So I think if you're going to be reading things about business or sales, great. You may get a new perspective, you may get a new insight, but really what it is there to do is to give you maybe a new frame, but don't take it as the Bible, right? You're going to find they found their own way. And many times I find that they don't even write it the way they did it, right? They don't remember. And that's okay. Neither do you. You don't remember how you got where you got, all the details. But really what I really love to encourage for people is find inside of yourself your own natural genius that you can apply your own methodology to that works for you. And don't be discouraged if you're reading somebody else's model and it's not working for you. That doesn't mean that you're broken. It just means it didn't work for you.
Okay, so let's circle around back to the conversation that led to this discussion that lived in the
Yeah.
house that Jack built. Okay, so you and I were both at the CompTIA conference a bit ago. I have no idea when this is broadcasting or when someone's listening to this, so time travel is possible. And we were talking about how many promising frameworks, processes, methodologies that were out there, specifically in our industry, the managed service industry, but really everywhere. That if you just follow my steps, if you just do my process, if you read my book, if you do the whatever, by gum, everything's going to come your way and it's going to be absolutely wonderful. And how no, that's really not the not the way that actually works. But they're selling a product, so they're going to push that agenda, which gets back to what you were just saying, right?
Yeah, so I mean, when you go out to write a book, as a person who's not a natural author, but somebody who wants to write a book about your business or maybe your technology, you're told that your best bet to get the most speaking engagements, to get the most book sales, to get the most consulting engagements, as you know, using your book as an $8 business card, your best bet is to build some kind of model that has 3 or 4 steps associated with it and fits neatly into an acronym that's memorable, right? So that's sort of the formula for writing a book. So if you're reading one of these things, oftentimes you're finding yourself trying to fit yourself into a formula that was layered over, you know, somebody's natural expertise, and may or may not have even frankly worked for them if they were, you know, coming from the beginning to where they are now. So I feel like a lot of people get very beat up by some of these models that are out there, or worse, sales managers who are, you know, thinking that a model should be working in their organization, and so trying to get their salespeople to follow a model that doesn't work. So I really feel for a lot of salespeople who, you know, most of us are somehow emotionally damaged, or we wouldn't be in sales at all, right? So it just kind of adds to the punishment if you succumb to these models that may or may not be working for you.
So it's interesting because, you know, I've got, you know, the 3 books I've written and all of that. And it's because I never approached it from that angle.
Mm.
And yet I think in one case at least, you know, when I did the MSP Survival Guide to Co-Managed Services, I created the term commits.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
And on the one hand, I basically said, here's a way, and not selling it as a service,
Yeah.
but selling it as, you know, I want to establish myself as I'm the content king, or or you know, the content expert from that standpoint. But you still end up having that, I've got to give you a framework that is identifiable, it is doable. And I would be honest from the standpoint of, say, let me tell you some of my mistakes so you can learn from them. But I
Yeah.
probably did present it as, you know, implying that I am a lot smarter than I actually am.
Well, so yeah, I'm going to push back on that one a little bit. So I think there is value. I think there's value in anybody writing a book. I mean,
Right.
everybody should try to write a book just to see how hard it is. Believe me, I've tried and cried over that many a time. But the value comes from when somebody is one. So everybody who is going to buy something or work with you wants to understand, you know, what's my experience going to be? You know, especially when you're making very big investment decisions or deciding to go with a consultant. You don't want to make a misstep. So you want to do as much as you can to allow somebody the experience of what it's going to be like to work with you, right? So this is one of the things that I really like to do with my LinkedIn posts, or sometimes I'll put a LinkedIn video up, or I'll send a video to somebody that is considering doing business with me. And one of the reasons that I do that is because I want people to feel like they're going to feel when they decide to work with me. And that's what's really great about the books that you've written, of which I've read the titles. But like,
That's really all you need to do.
I
The
don't want
rest
your
of it is,
job is a great title because it allows somebody to kind of overcome that first objection of working with you. And then, you know, if they do dive into the first 10 or 25 pages, which is how far most people get,
Right, absolutely.
they'll start to get a sense of your style, your voice. And if you do apply processes in your own business, you should write about your process so people know what they're entering into. But that's the value, I think, of a book. And I can point, you know, to one author that I know, Jill Conrath, is a sales author, and she wrote one of her best books called How to Sell to Big Companies. But the reason it's so powerful and pervasive, I don't know that it all applies anymore. That was a while ago and everything has changed, as you mentioned. But she was writing it to one specific person who was trying to break into sales to big companies. So she was writing it for reals, like, I really want to be of value to this person. And then it just published and was applicable across, you know, thousands of readers.
Cool. And I think, because one of the things that I like to do with any type of sales process that I like is I also like to try to identify who would be a bad fit.
Mm,
You
okay.
know,
Yeah.
and because I can't be everything to everybody. I can't solve everyone's issue. I can't do that, and not all clients are going to be a great fit for us in terms of the value we present, and not all clients are going to be a great fit, as in they're going to be a pain in the tuchus to work with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, to some degree, and this would be true for people who are writing sales process books, are like, who would be a bad fit? Say that early on, so that it kind of gets back to another point you were making early on, that whole you're doing is it transactional or relationship based that you're looking for?
Yeah.
You know, because they're not the same.
Yeah. Well, so this is one of the things that we talked about before the interview that I thought was really cool is I think that's right. So if you're thinking as a salesperson about your territory or what you're accountable to produce for the company, you're thinking of yourself as the CEO of that outcome, then you are going to be the person that wants to have people, as you're saying, we kind of call it get to know faster, right?
Mhm.
Like weed them out faster. So if you're looking at your territory as being the CEO of those outcomes and that territory, then I think you do move towards that. But I'll tell you, especially in the tech world, there's so much about metrics of how many meetings did you get scheduled and how many how many leads did you qualify, and as if there's some like magic to quantity of those, which really just slogs up your pipeline. But a lot of salespeople are not encouraged to get to that. No, they're encouraged to so I'm going to actually let you know. So I got this really awesome email from this guy that I've been working with for over a year. His team is ready to, really consider doing business with us finally. And he said, but there's this one guy who he's willing to get on a call, but he's kind of a do-it-yourselfer and he's not going to want to work with you all. So can we schedule that call? And I was like, no, we can't schedule that call. I am not here to convince anybody to do something that they don't want to do, right?
Yeah.
I'm here to help you work through the process. I'm here to help you understand how it's going to look and what our outcomes are going to be. But I'm not here to pitch anybody. But I think a lot of salespeople are really pushed into that, show the presentation, have another meeting. And so I think that we do move away from looking for the no. We're looking for the yes, and we end up with a whole bunch of maybes that turn into a very clogged pipeline.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because we have a situation right now, which we're just finishing out, where we have been talking to a potential client for over a year.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to very briefly, they had they have an arrangement or an agreement with their current provider that is horrible, but it's
Yeah.
also expensive to get out of.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't pull the trigger. And I was like, let's sit together and let's go over the numbers, not trying to twist your arm. The sooner we can do this, the sooner you'll be done with it. And they basically were, we want to work with you, but so we basically said, look, we're not going to talk to you. We're not going to keep bugging you, all that. So we'll just every quarter or so, we'll just say, hey, let us know if anything changes. And we basically put them off the burner, moved them from one status to another in the CRM and all that.
Yeah.
And they finally, one of our last things, they finally said, yeah, we're ready to do it. And so now we're starting to do the onboard process. And it's one of those where had we taken the traditional either hound them immediately to get that yes immediately, or we're never going to talk to you again because we're never getting a response from you. I think that would have fallen to the wayside.
I am thrilled that you brought this up. So as somebody who's irreverent, one of the common sales mythologies out there, and I hear it all the time, is time kills all deals. And that's just false. And this is something that organizations really need to understand about the length of their sales cycle. Is just like you said, if you have a complex sale that is going to be a multi-year relationship and a big investment, in this case for your customer to get out of an existing relationship and into a new relationship, one of the things that they're looking for is, am I going to get into another bad relationship, right? So over time, you've built trust and you've infused value into that relationship by listening to them, believing them where they were. And I have found, some of my sales cycles have been, 18 months. My longest sales cycle ever was 10 years. I started a relationship and we finally did business together 10 years later, but I got a full contract value. They became a relationship that we worked with for many, many years. I'm not there anymore, but they still are with that company. And they paid full price, right? So, and they paid for the highest level of service that we could offer. So now, obviously, you can't wait 10 years for every one of your deals or you'll be out of business, but that's why you have to have like a multi-layered pipeline.
Right.
But my point is, if you're doing it right, obviously, if you're buying a car, time will kill all deals. You don't come back for 3, whatever, maybe, unless you're buying an aspirational car and the person stays in touch with you. But the point is, I think that you can drive more value, more contract value, more lifetime contract value, more ARR, MRR, all the sexy terms. If you are working at your customer's pace, then time builds value, especially when you are looking to become a partner and not a vendor. And I think that's a big difference.
So what is the difference between a partner and a vendor in your mind?
So a vendor is somebody that's going to sell you something and you're going to use it until you don't. And your salesperson is going to show up once a year at the time of renewal, and that'll be that. Partner is somebody who, during this pre-sales process, which is what we call it in technology, which I think is so weird because it's the sales process, but whatever. So the terminology is so weird. So what you're doing is you're building the foundation for how you're going to work together. And if you're doing it right, you may sell a technology, or you may sell a service like managed services. But really what you're doing is selling business outcomes. So the thing that I think salespeople can get better at, instead of sales tactics and techniques, get better at the language of business. Get better at understanding how to read a customer's 10K. Get better at being on investor calls where the CEO is talking about what their business objectives are. And then you're the one who's going to work backwards into what the value is that you provide that's going to touch every aspect of the business. The chief financial officer, do you impact EBITDA? If you do by 1%, then and they have a private equity owner, they're going to be thrilled that you're talking with their day-to-day. If it's, engineering, maybe you're eliminating the need for them to add headcount, which is a very big pain point right now. But my point is, you're working through this business idea with your customers as you move to the time when you sign on the line that is dotted, which is usually a very anticlimactic day because you've been doing all this really great foundational work ahead of time so that you can ensure success on the other side. And I think that's a partner. And then you're checking in on a regular basis about, are we hitting what you said you wanted to hit as a result? And do we need to pivot, make a change? That's a partner.
Cool. And it's one of those where one thing it's not quite push back on, but I want to clarify.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the examples and the stuff you talked about were on the mid-sized company standpoint, but the same thing is absolutely true for the small companies as well.
Sure.
You know, they can be, and it could be a much more tangible value
Mhm.
of, hey, you know, if we implement this particular technology, this particular thing, whatever it is that you do as far as your delivery of goods and services, you're going to be more effective, you're going to be more productive, you're going to be more secure, you're going to be able to do whatever. But I
Yeah.
think it's one of those where, and especially in IT, and especially in the managed service business, we are horrible about
Mhm.
talking about value,
Yeah.
because we almost always think of value as us. It's our value we're going to talk about. We're the best. We're going to give you the best monitoring because nobody cares other than you, other than
Yeah.
us. You know, we're going to do all this stuff, but to talk about how the client is going to increase their value or the value of what they deliver,
Yeah.
and that's where the relationship I think is really can be best implemented. And
Well,
so,
I think so too, Bob. The trick about what you're saying is, it's kind of common vernacular right now to talk about driving value into the relationship, but I think people don't understand what that really means. So value is sort of abstract. And what I like to do is really think through what actual day-to-day experience is my customer going to have that they don't have now, right? So in IT, managed IT right now, especially when you're talking to smaller companies, you have to have a good relationship because they are time-starved people and they're wearing many hats. So if they're giving you time, you need to be sharing with them what their day is going to look like. And what that means is they can go away on the 4th of July with their family and not worry about that ransom attack that's going to happen to multiple businesses over a holiday weekend, because we know that happens, right? So when you can start to paint those kinds of pictures, or maybe you're saving maybe your client has all the wrong cloud infrastructure, so their cloud bills are going through the roof, and you can help them sort of tier their cloud strategy. That's something that is meaningful to them because it means that they can hire another person, they can put more equity on the books, they can get closer to their exit strategy because they're getting more profitable. Like, these are the things that you have to really understand what value means to
right.
somebody. And when you're selling to a big company like I do, a lot of time we talk about how B2B sales, it's business, it's not personal. But I will tell you that it is a much bigger deal to buy the wrong ERP system and get fired than it is to buy the wrong watch. So, your reputation is on the line, your relationship with your wife and children is on the line. Like, you have to understand what value means to your customer in tangible, meaningful, even emotional ways to be valuable to them.
And I think also with that, to understand how value has changed. Because I do think that over the past 5 years or so, just the simple definition of value, whether you talk about it on an individual level, but also all the changes that have happened from a supply chain standpoint,
Yeah.
all the changes that have happened in terms of the flexibility that organizations want to have as far as the work from anywhere, all of the
Yeah.
changes that have happened, all of these things have changed. And some of them are still stuck with I'm going to try to survive using the same value I used in 2010,
Yeah.
which is not working, and they don't necessarily know why in a lot of
Yeah.
cases, especially in the manufacturing world, or who's
Mhm.
starting to enter into compliance requirements, and
Yeah.
to be able to guide them through that journey without selling them something.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think.
It's a
Yeah.
delicate balance. I mean, just to kind of highlight one of the things that impacts my world is, many of our customers, the buying habits of their customers is changing and changing quickly.
Yeah.
So believe it or not, millennials carry budget now, and they want to buy in a digital environment, and they don't want to talk to a salesperson if ever they don't have to. So one of my roles is to help our customers understand where your customer is going to be, not tomorrow, but where are they going to be 36 months out, 24 months out,
Yeah.
18 months out, and how are they going to want to buy from you? And how do I make your product click to buy? How do I put your products in the right digital marketplaces so that you can be there to capture that revenue? Because these people they don't have a published phone number. They're not going to answer your email, and you don't know how to find them or where to find them unless you're looking where it is that they're going to start looking. And so that's how I help our customers, is find the right digital marketplaces, get digital ready, and get as clicked by as you can, as fast as you can, because otherwise you're going to be way behind. So that's what I kind of help my people think through, is how do you change how you used to sell into how people are going to want to buy.
And you almost have that, and again, we're focusing on sales, but regardless of what your role is, how you used to fill in the blank versus how you fill in the blank now.
Yeah.
Because everything has changed, and it's, I'm old enough, 65, I think, something like that, where every single generation I've gone through has been ridiculed as being the worst generation of all time, including mine.
Yeah.
Everybody has found reasons why we're the worst, and then they're the worst, and then they're the worst, so on and so forth. But however you define it, however you measure it, the millennial, their buying power is going to do nothing but increase. Deal with it.
Correct.
And it's one of
They're
those.
not conforming to how you want to sell.
Yeah. And it's just like when I was a kid, I was told, oh my God, you watch too much TV. You spend too much time on the phone, because my parents grew up not doing those things.
Right.
And yada, yada. And you can see the same type of thing happening in the next generation. And I do think, definitely to your point, that there are people who are refusing to accept the fact that there's a different way that folks are approaching how they deal with purchasing something.
Right.
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 But they don't remember that a drive-through was an unknown entity not too long ago, as was self-service gas and everything else along those lines. So stuff changes.
Yeah, I mean, I was writing a check to my dog sitter just, I don't know, 5 years ago, and I don't know who writes a check anymore.
Who had a dog sitter?
Well, I did.
No, I mean, from the standpoint of not too long ago, you have all of these industries that have grown up, that from the service industry and the like. And now with AI, you're going to see it. I don't think you're going to see automated AI-driven dog sitters. That'd be kind of weird. But all of these new industries are going to happen, and how do we adapt, and how do we adapt to those? So
yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I feel like if you really approach your life and your business and whatever you're accountable for in your business. So anybody who's watching this, I believe that every single person in an organization has a role in sales. I believe that if you are the one who is fulfilling tickets, being in communication, doing a great job, checking in, you're in sales, because they're going to do more. Your customer's going to do more business with you, and they're going to recommend you to other people. If you're the one in accounting and you're getting the invoices out on time and correct, they're going to do more business with you. Every single person has a role in growing the business. But that aside, if you're really approaching your role and the things that you're accountable for as if you're the CEO, this is, I'm sure, true of you, Bob. You probably read a lot of books about business as you've been building your successful company. But at the end of the day, and I really hate that term, but at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to get the good results or not. It's not if the author was right, then great. If they were wrong, you're not going to double down on wrong stuff as the CEO of your company. You're going to put a fork in it and move on to the next thing. So I think that that's something that I'd really love to leave people with, is take interest, take other perspectives, learn new things, develop new neural pathways. I just a year ago, I started really getting into chess, because I wanted not to understand strategy or anything like that, because you're not in opposition to your customer anymore. There's no winning. Everybody, no, there is a zero-sum game in chess. But what I like is it makes me think about things differently. And if you're somebody who's trying to develop or grow a business or a territory, think new thoughts, find new ways to do new things, and you'll be more interesting, first of all, and you'll see things from different perspectives that will give you aha moments that lead to money.
So I want to take a break here quickly, but I want to get back to this because we just brought up a real interesting topic to kick off on, and that is how to learn about sales without reading about sales.
Amen.
So we'll be right back after this break. Yay.
Don't let IT overwhelm you. Simplex-IT's Learning Center provides easy-to-understand answers to your most commonly asked IT questions. Our videos cover both technical and non-technical topics, everything from cybersecurity to cloud computing, managed services to co-managed services, and how easy it is to work with us. All so you can stay ahead of the game and maximize your IT. We have over 100 videos, so visit simplex-it.com today and look for our Learning Center. And not all videos have Bob in them.
Wait, what?
Simplify your complex IT with Simplex-IT.
Okay, and we are back with Dianna Geairn, and last we were talking, we started talking about a couple of books that were not sales or a couple of topics that were not sales oriented. Specifically, you were talking chess and others. And and you and I had talked about this. One of the books that I strongly recommend is not about chess, and in fact talks about poker as a business metaphor. It's called Thinking in Bets by Annie Dukes. I strongly recommend that. It's not about sales directly. And then my favorite chess book, and you and I talked about this as well, and I thought I had it here, but I think it's at home, is Chess Mysteries of Sherlock Holmes, which is a very weird take on chess. Instead of looking at what are the strategies you can use moving forward, it's how did we get here? It's called retrograde analysis. But anyway, so
Wow.
it's really cool stuff.
I've got to read that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is hard to find, especially apparently in my office. Those are the couple, but it gets to the point where one of the things I think that happens also is we get so caught up in I'm going to learn only from things that are specifically written about the topic that I want to learn about.
Yeah.
So I only am going to read sales books. I'm only going to read, the personal development books. But there's more to professional development than that, isn't there?
Well, I think that you really expand yourself when you dive into a discipline that you had no idea about before, right? So I guess there's some common thinking, and it's probably true, that when you're learning things, there's sort of a mathematical brain, a language brain, and a music brain, right? So I think that when you kind of find ways to synthesize the three in areas that you've never thought about before, it gives you new perspectives on how people accomplish success. So I really like to, there's a service out there called, I think it's masterclass.com, and it has people like, what's his name? I'm struggling now. Steve Martin teaching comedy, and the famous photographers, Gary Kasparov teaching chess. But I mean, it's more than you could ever take in. But what happens is when you start to have a resource like that, you can jump in for a few hours and listen to the way someone became successful in their own field. And it'll give you new ideas about how you can approach your own field, but also it'll allow you to connect with other people, right? So if I'm getting on a call with you, Bob, and I'm, selling to you, and you and I have some way to talk about something that you're passionate about, like, solar eclipses, for example. And this is something that I've done. We just went and got the glasses at my eye doctor because we're gonna be watching the eclipse. Unfortunately, we're not going to be in the path of total eclipse. I know you will, but the fact that I can talk about how we did that 4 years ago and what that was about, that starts to cement more of a relationship with us rather than just being transactional. So learn about the world. The more you learn about other practices, the more interesting you are, and the more likely you are to find commonalities with the people that you're selling to, which is what builds relationship and trust.
I'll also add one more aspect of it. It also allows you to look at the same topic with a different perspective.
Sure.
It's kind of like what we're doing here. When I talk about the BizTech twist, the idea is I want to look at a topic in a different way. Instead of talking about sales process as here's the process you should follow, we're talking about it as it's more complicated than that. Not no, processes don't fit everybody in every way, and so on and so forth. And so we can talk about metaphors, whether it be chess, whether it be poker, whether it be, life experiences, anything along those lines, that some people will get a better insight because it's a different angle.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know, so I think both of those work nicely from my standpoint.
Well, and the thing you've got to remember if you're, if you're in a role of growing revenue for your organization is that the people that you're going to be talking to who ultimately are going to be the influencer or the decision maker on buying your product or service, you're selling all day long. They're buying once a quarter, right? So I think it's wise to do things and listen to things and read the books that your customers are reading and thinking about so that you can start to really get in their world with their vernacular and their language. And the way that I like to do that is I like to go and find what are the top podcasts for chief technology officers? What are the top podcasts for VPs of engineering?
Right.
What are some studies that I can read about the current state of DevOps in the world, or the current state of ecosystems and marketplaces? And I'm even starting to host a happy hour for channel chiefs. I'm not a channel chief, but I want to hear what they're talking about. And I'm betting, and I'm actually engaging another organization that runs a marketplace who wants to do this with me. And we're just going to gather these people and hear what they have to talk about, right? So these are things that you can do to get that different perspective that have nothing to do with, I'm going to show you the right PowerPoint and convince you to buy my product. It really is, I want to learn you. I want to learn what you're thinking about. And if I'm in the right conversations, they're going to come to me to do business because they've already had an experience of me.
Yeah. And that's one of the things. So one of the things that we do is we look for local networking events that are aimed at verticals that we work with: manufacturing, aeronautic groups, nonprofit organizations that have board of directors, whatever. And we will attend those and we support them, but we're not there to sell. We're there to listen. We're there to learn. We're there to basically say, okay, and listen both their pain points, their value points, the challenges that they're facing with not with the goal of immediately saying we can solve that, but learning what it is in a deeper way so that when we try to engage in conversation, we can first start with let's build that common baseline of understanding.
Yeah.
Which gets us in a much better position to talk about value.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like when you listen, you can go back to your organization and improve your product or service too, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to learn things that if you were just focusing on selling your product the way that it is to the person and hoping that it fits into their ideas, you can go back to your organization and say, I'm hearing these trends and what can we do to be more valuable in that area right now? I think that that's really great. The other thing that you're pointing to is, I really don't love cliches, but this one's good. I once heard, if you want money, ask for advice. And if you want advice, ask for money. And it's kind of the same with the sale, right? If you want the sale, ask for advice, or ask for somebody's perspective. One of the things I really like to encourage when I'm going to have a conversation is let's have a brainstorming session. Let's swap ideas. I want to hear what you're thinking about this particular topic and share with you some outside resources that might actually be interesting to you that I've curated. So when you swap ideas, it's more likely to lead to something that's super interesting rather than, unless, they say 3% of people are in market right now. So at some point you're going to hit somebody who needs what you have right now.
Right.
But those odds, speaking of probabilities, odds and bets, those are not working in your favor.
Right. Yep. No, that's good. All good stuff. All good stuff. So let's talk about learning, about individual learning and development and all that, because we're sitting there, we need to constantly improve. And that's more true than ever for every professional job that's out there. You know,
Yeah,
because everything's changing and it's changing dramatically and probably changing even faster moving forward.
yeah,
And so, and we have a ton of experts out there.
yeah.
And a lot of the experts, you know, you have the those who can do, those who can't teach, those who can't teach or do consults, you know, that kind of thing.
Oh God, that's so bad.
And it's one of those where we've all been there, we've all done that, got the t-shirt, so on and so forth. But especially like when the new tech, for example, when AI first came out, or first was coming out in the public way that it
Yeah.
did over the past year or so, suddenly everybody was an AI consultant or an AI expert, including a lot of people who were 3 months earlier were security experts. You
Right.
know, and a year or two prior to that, there were big data experts or so on and so forth. And a lot of them are coming out. And in our industry, the managed service industry, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody else is, but people will ask me because I've been in the business now, we've been around for 15 years or so and have some modicum of success and notoriety. So they'll ask me when they're starting out their organization, how would I do it, to tell them how I do it. Well, I did it in 2007.
Yeah, it's a different world.
It's a slightly different world. And without having that kind of guardrail on whatever story I give them, my advice is going to be at best suspect.
Yeah, for sure. It should be.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
my advice should be suspect, period.
This I've learned about you.
Yeah.
I don't know. One of the valuable things about you is that you tell it like it is. There's no sugarcoating, and I think that leads to a lot of trust as well. I think that one of the things that sort of surprises people when surprises people when they're in my organization on a call with me, on a sales call with me, is that I'll tell the truth.
Yeah.
I'll be like, this is how this particular project is going to play out, and there will be some bumps, and this is how we handle the bumps.
Yeah.
And I get off these calls and they're like, can you say those things? You can say those things. People want to know that they can trust you, and that's oh, can I get into a little conversation about discounting?
Forget it. We're done. No. Yes, of course.
Don't discount. Have price integrity. Because here's what happens. Like, trust is everything for growing a relationship. And if you have an influencer in the organization and they become your champion for their company to buy from you, and you give them a quote, and then their boss comes in or procurement comes in and they can push you down on that number, now you've made your day-to-day contact, who's your champion, look like a jerk who didn't do their job. So you want to go to the mat for that person who has championed for that price for you. And if that's not really your price, don't give the price, right?
Yep.
Give the price that it's going to be. And I know that that's a very American way of looking at it. I know that if you're doing business in the Middle East, which I don't, it's a completely different, people expect different things.
Sure.
But in the world of trust, I want somebody to come back to me and know that the number I gave them was the best number.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it deals with from the expectation and such. And one of the things, because people always, and thankfully it's starting to go away, but the number one sales question to start with was, well, what keeps you up at night? And my answer was always, I have a barfing cat. And when she starts barfing, it's somewhere out there in the darkness.
It's your job to at least have a good hypothesis about what that person struggles with or is worried about. That's your job.
But in my case, it is my thing for my company, my organization, my world, whatever, it's commoditization.
Yeah.
That's the thing that scares me in terms of that what we do is so repeatable that it's hard for me to create a unique value proposition. And one of the things to me has always been, if I have to, whether it be forced upon me or pushed upon me or the arm twist on me, that I have to compete on price, that's a warning signal that I'm however I'm communicating it, it's coming across as a commodity.
Yeah, for sure.
So for me to embrace the whole, we're going to make it cheaper, or we have to deal with price, we have to work on price, whether or not we should or not.
Yeah,
I see your point, and I agree with your point. But for me, it more is a warning signal that my value proposition is suspect at best.
yeah. Well, so if you're talking with your influencer that's going to champion with you, you can start to have those conversations where they say, that feels too high to me. Oh,
Yeah.
tell me where that's coming from, and you can work on it with them. But kind of once you get to that agreement about the price, I think you do your best to at least come back to them and say, look, I'm getting a lot of pressure from your organization to, reduce the price. What are we going to exchange that allows me
Absolutely.
to, like, what can I give you a little bit extra of this year so we can keep the price that way? Or what are we going to take off the table?
Yeah.
Or you know what, I will help this year on that. But when I send you the contract, it's going to say, this is the price and this is the discount and this is why, and we're not going back, so you have to pay that price. Anyway, I could go on forever about negotiating with procurement. And look, if you ever want to have a conversation about how to negotiate with procurement at Fortune 1000 companies, you should check me out on LinkedIn. Like, come DM me. We'll have an hour-long conversation. I can go on and on, but I think it's important to have price integrity.
I agree with that, and product integrity as well.
For sure. Yeah.
So,
well, if you don't have
all right.
product integrity, you're
So,
a mess.
last topic, so I want to be respectful of time.
Yep.
So you've got some people who will read every freaking book there is, and we'll stick with sales, but it's all over the place.
Sure.
They will read every one, or they will read one and say, that is my mantra. I'm gonna follow every one of them. I'm gonna do. And then you've got people who are the exact opposite. They will not read anything. They do things the way they've done, so on and so forth. What is the best way to kind of self-police how you're approaching learning, so that you're not learning, I hate to say learning too much because that sounds horrible, but you're taking too much in and not an appropriate way, or you're not looking to grow enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I've always been one of these people that just really trusts what I am compelled to do. So if I'm compelled to,
Just to be clear,
yeah.
I don't know the guy personally, but I'll bet you Jack the Ripper felt the same way. He was
Well,
compelled to do these things.
yeah. So are we talking about how to see if you've got a criminal mind? That's outside of my purview.
Totally different
more,
podcast. Totally different podcast.
Yeah, I think people need to trust themselves more. If you feel like you need to immerse yourself in a whole bunch of books, I think you should do that. And if you think that you should immerse yourself in one system and try it out until you have or haven't cracked the code, I think you should do that. I think that if you have an intention and a goal, you'll be naturally turned on. Some people, there's a word for it. I don't understand. It's a brain word, so I'm not going to use it because I don't know what it's about. But you'll naturally start to notice the things that will help you get to that outcome. And I think you should trust that.
So self-awareness.
Self-awareness, yeah. I think if somebody might be reading too many books, it's because they don't trust themselves.
Yeah, and I can see
not
that.
Trust that you can do this job, or do you not trust that you can get this outcome? And that's the thing to go to work on.
Yeah, and you could be in a situation that, like, it would be very different from someone who is new to sales, especially if they're like a technical worker or whatever that's got thrown into the sales. Although, like you said, we're all in sales whether we like it or not. As well as someone who is moved from a transactional based company to a relationship based company or the like. But it gets to the point where, to me, there's also a question of, you have to have a filter.
Yeah.
You have to basically be able to say, to a certain degree, on all things there, if something is 100% attributable, it's 100% applicable, you're probably not paying enough attention to it.
Yeah.
Or you're coming in so green that
Yeah.
you're going to adhere to this one thing. But to me, it gets down to that, there's got to be a filter. You've got to have a good handle on your goals
Yeah.
of what you're trying to accomplish.
I think you have to have a filter, but I think the more successful people like you have to have a point of view. People rely on you to have a perspective and a point of view. So I think you've got to have a voice. You've got to know what your voice is, right? So when I'm in a sales conversation, we're probably going to have some fun. We're probably going to be a little bit snarky if we can. But that's not everybody's style, right? So don't try to be somebody that you aren't. But I think understand your voice. The one quote I do love the most is Oscar Wilde, "Be yourself, everyone else is taken." So I think that you need a filter. I think you need to trust yourself. I think you need a voice and a perspective, and then surround yourself with smart people. I know this is tough for you, but
They run as soon as I'm the end of the room. So, but absolutely, that is cool. And it's one where, in some ways, I think we overcomplicate it, and in some ways, I think we oversimplify it.
yeah.
Which is kind of hard to do simultaneously, but I think people tend to do that to a certain degree.
I don't know. Humans are really insane. Like
I keep waiting for the upgrade.
oh, I don't think it's coming in this lifetime. I don't know. Maybe the next generation.
There you
I
go.
don't know.
There you go. So cool. So I think that's a good place to end the conversation for now. But for those of people who want to reach out to you, first of all, what type of people can you help from a professional standpoint? And what kind of people do you want to talk with and engage, and how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I want to talk, this is kind of broad, but I want to talk with people that are having a business problem that technology can solve. Specifically, if you're trying to build a marketplace or some kind of platform where your customers will engage with you, that's where I can be really helpful. Or if you're trying to find the right marketplaces for your SaaS product. So that's all very specific and won't apply to most of the people who are going to listen to this. But if you just want to have a really great, fun conversation about sales and see what our networks can do for each other, I like those too. And I can be reached through LinkedIn is the best. So Dianna with 2 N's, Dianna, Geairn with 3 vowels in a row, Geairn. Or look me up as the Irreverent Sales Girl. It'll lead you to me as well. And you'll spell it wrong. You'll spell it the Irrelevant Sales Girl, which is fine, but you won't find me there. But yeah, LinkedIn's probably best.
Cool. Okay. Any last words for anybody?
Thank you, Bob. I hope if this was interesting for one person, it was a blast for me. So thank you for having me.
No, I appreciate it. This is, as we talked about at the bar in Chicago, this is the kind of conversation I love to have, where we take some just standard ideas of sales development, but turn it all over the place in terms of approaching, and how do we deal with all of these different sources and resources and processes. So this is cool.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And everybody who's listening to this, we're done. But remember, there's that whole thing that's going on. I don't know if you've heard or not, but there aren't enough pressed thumbs in the world. So you have to go look for that thumbs up. You have to press it, or else there's a kitten in Utah that will die. And you also have to share this with your friends so that they can help save this kitten. It's a cute kitten. And comment and subscribe, because there's a kitten. It needs
terrible.
you. It really is. Catch y'all later. Bye.
Thank you.
Cool.